My great-granddaughter asked why my name wasn't on the family portrait, and the secret exploded. At our family reunion last summer, my great-granddaughter Sophie, just 7 years old, stood in front of the large family portrait hanging in the dining room of our ancestral home. She studied it carefully, reading each name inscribed on the brass plate below. Then she turned to me with innocent confusion and asked the question that would change everything. "Great-Grandma Eleanor, why isn't your name here?" Her words hit the room like a thunderclap. Conversation stopped, faces went pale, and 43 years of carefully constructed lies began to crumble. This is the story of how a child's simple question uncovered a betrayal that had been hidden for decades, a secret about inheritance, identity, and the role I was forced to erase myself from. What followed was a wave of silence, shame, and unexpected truths that finally brought justice to a wrong that should never have happened. This video reveals how I was written out of my own family's history, and how I finally reclaimed my place in the story. Subscribe for stories of family secrets, justice, and generational truth. The question: when innocence exposes decades of lies. My name is Eleanor May Whitfield. I'm 84 years old, and last summer, at our annual family reunion in Charleston, South Carolina, my 7-year-old great-granddaughter asked a question that detonated a secret my family had been hiding for over 40 years. "Great-Grandma Eleanor, why isn't your name on the family portrait?" 5 seconds. That's all it took for 43 years of carefully constructed lies to begin unraveling. 5 seconds for the truth I'd buried to claw its way back to the surface. 5 seconds for my family to realize that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, eventually find their way into the light. This is the story of how I was erased from my own family's history, and how a child's innocent curiosity finally brought justice to a betrayal I'd lived with for most of my adult life. But let me start at the beginning, so you understand what that portrait meant. The Whitfield family has been in Charleston since before the Civil War. Our ancestral home, Magnolia House, is a historic property that's been passed down through 5 generations. It's not a mansion by modern standards, but it's significant. 3 stories, wraparound porches, original crown molding, situated on 2 acres in the historic district. The family portrait Sophie was looking at wasn't a painting. It was a large photograph, professionally taken in 1981, showing the entire Whitfield family gathered on the front steps of Magnolia House. 37 people in that photo: my parents-in-law, siblings, cousins, children, grandchildren. And below the photograph, mounted on a brass plate, were all the names. Every single person in that picture was identified, except me. I was in the photograph, standing in the back row, partially hidden behind my husband, Robert. You can see my shoulder, part of my face. I'm there, physically present, but my name wasn't on the plate. The inscription read, "The Whitfield Family, Magnolia House, August 1981. Followed by a list of names in small, elegant script. I'd looked at that portrait 1,000 times over the years. At first, the absence of my name was a fresh wound that stung every time I saw it. Then it became something I'd learned to ignore, like chronic pain you eventually stop noticing. But I never forgot, and I never forgave. The family reunion happens every summer. Usually around 40 to 50 people show up. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and a few extended relatives who've managed to stay connected over the years. This year, we had 53 people. My son David was there with his wife Jennifer and their 3 children. My daughter Margaret came from Atlanta with her husband and 4 grandchildren. My youngest son Thomas brought his family from Texas. And there was Sophie, my great-granddaughter through Margaret's eldest daughter. 7 years old, bright as a button, curious about everything. We were having lunch in the dining room, tables pushed together, covered in food, everyone talking and laughing. The portrait hung on the wall where it always had, just above the sideboard. Sophie had been staring at it for several minutes. I noticed her because she'd gone quiet, which was unusual for such a lively child. She was reading the names on the brass plate, moving her finger along as she sounded them out. Then she looked around the room, matching names to faces, and then she looked at me. "Great-Grandma Eleanor?" I smiled at her. "Yes, sweetheart? Why isn't your name on the family portrait?" The room didn't go silent immediately. It took a few seconds for people to process what she'd asked. But once they did, conversations died mid-sentence. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. People froze. My son David spoke first. "Sophie, honey, why don't you come help Daddy get some more lemonade from the kitchen?" "But I want to know why great-grandma's name isn't there. She's in the picture. See? Right there." She pointed. "But her name isn't on the list. Why?" My daughter Margaret's face had gone white. Her husband was staring at the portrait like he'd never seen it before, which, to be fair, he probably hadn't paid much attention to it in the past. "Sophie," Margaret said carefully, "that's just how it was done back then. Not everyone's name fit on the plate. But there's empty space. Look, right there at the end. There's room for more names." She was right. There was space. The brass plate could have easily accommodated several more names. "Sophie, that's enough," David said, his voice tight. "Come with me, now." But Sophie, bless her stubborn little heart, didn't move. She looked at me, her 7-year-old face full of genuine confusion and something else, a sense that something wasn't fair. "Great-grandma, do you know why your name isn't there?" And in that moment, I made a decision. A decision I'd been too afraid, too beaten down, too conditioned to make for 43 years. I was going to tell the truth. "Yes, Sophie, I know why." "Eleanor," my son Thomas stood up, warning in his voice. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't you dare try to silence me. Not anymore." "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Thomas? When I'm dead and the truth dies with me? When Sophie's children ask the same question decades from now and no one remembers enough to answer?" I looked around the room at my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Most of them had no idea what was about to come out. Some of them, the older ones, looked uncomfortable, like they'd suspected something but never asked. And then there were my children, David, Margaret, and Thomas. They knew. They'd always known. And they'd kept the secret to protect themselves. "Sophie," I said gently, "my name isn't on that portrait because your great-great-grandfather decided I didn't deserve to be included in the family history. Why? Because I'm not a Whitfield by blood. I married into the family, and your great-great-grandfather believed that only blood family deserved to be remembered." That was the sanitized version, the version a 7-year-old could understand. But everyone else in that room knew I was leaving out the real reason. And my son David, perhaps sensing that I was about to blow the lid off everything, tried one more time to stop me. "Mom, please, this is a family reunion. Let's not do this now. We can talk about it later. We've had 43 years of later, David. Later never comes. Later is just another word for never." I turned back to Sophie. "Do you want to know the whole truth, sweetheart?" She nodded solemnly. "Your great-great-grandfather didn't just leave my name off the portrait. He also tried to write me out of his will. He tried to make sure that when he died, I wouldn't inherit anything from this family. Not the house, not the land, not the money. He wanted to punish me for something I didn't do. And everyone in this family let him." The explosion was immediate. "That's not true!" Thomas stood up, his face red. "Dad had his reasons. Dad was a liar and a manipulator," I said, my voice steady. "And you all know it. You just never wanted to admit it because admitting it would mean admitting you benefited from his lies." Margaret was crying. "Mom, please stop. You're embarrassing us." "Embarrassing you?" "Margaret, I was embarrassed for 43 years. I was humiliated, erased, treated like I was nothing. And not one of you, not one, stood up for me. So forgive me if I don't particularly care about your embarrassment right now. What did great-great-grandpa think you did?" Sophie asked, still curious despite the tension. And that was the question that mattered, the one that held the key to everything. "He thought I had an affair," I said. "He thought I cheated on your great-grandfather Robert. And because of that, he believed that one of my children wasn't really a Whitfield. So he left my name off the portrait, refused to include me in family documents, and tried to cut me out of his will entirely." "But you didn't have an affair?" "No, sweetheart, I didn't." "Then why did he think you did?" I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment I'd been both dreading and longing for. Because someone lied to him. Someone in this family told him I'd been unfaithful, and he believed them instead of believing me. Chapter 2, The Truth. When secrets can no longer be buried. Let me tell you the full story, the one my children know but have never wanted discussed, The one that's been whispered about at family gatherings but never openly acknowledged. I married Robert Whitfield in 1959. I was 21, he was 23. We were in love, the kind of young, optimistic love that believes it can overcome anything. Robert's father, Harrison Whitfield, was a prominent lawyer in Charleston, wealthy, respected, and controlling. He had very specific ideas about how his family should behave, who they should marry, what was acceptable. He didn't like me. Never did. I came from a working-class family. My father was a mechanic, my mother a seamstress. We weren't suitable for the Whitfield name, but Robert loved me and married me anyway, much to Harrison's disapproval. For the first few years, things were tense but manageable. Harrison tolerated me because I gave him grandchildren, David in 1961, Margaret in 1963, Thomas in 1966. But then, in 1978, something happened that changed everything. Robert's younger brother, my brother-in-law Charles, made a pass at me. It was at a family party. Robert was outside with guests. Charles had been drinking. He cornered me in the kitchen and tried to kiss me. When I pushed him away and told him to never do that again, he got angry. "You think you're too good for me? You, with your poverty background? I'm married to your brother, Charles. This is inappropriate." "Inappropriate," he sneered. "You walk around here acting like you belong in this family, but everyone knows you're just trailer trash who got lucky." I slapped him, hard, and walked out. I told Robert what happened that night. He confronted Charles, who denied it. Said I was lying, that I'd been the one to make advances and he'd rejected me. Robert believed me, but he also asked me not to make a big deal about it because he didn't want to cause family drama. That should have been the end of it, but Charles held a grudge. 2 years later, Charles told his father, Harrison, that he'd seen me with another man, that I was having an affair, that he had proof. He didn't have proof because there was no affair. But Harrison believed him because Charles was blood, and I wasn't. Harrison confronted me, called me a whore, said I'd tainted the family name, demanded that Robert divorce me. Robert refused. He knew I hadn't cheated, but Harrison was relentless. He insisted there be a paternity test for Thomas, who was 14 at the time, to prove whether he was really Robert's son. The paternity test came back positive. Thomas was absolutely Robert's biological child. All 3 of our children were. But Harrison refused to believe it. He said the test must have been faulty, that I'd somehow manipulated the results. He was so convinced of Charles's lie that no amount of evidence could change his mind. And that's when he made his decision. If he couldn't kick me out of the family legally, he'd erase me symbolically. My name was left off the family portrait commissioned that year. I was excluded from family documents. Harrison changed his will to make sure that when he died, I wouldn't inherit anything directly. Everything would go to Robert, with the stipulation that I not have access to it. He died in 1984. The will was contested by Robert, who fought to have those conditions removed. It took 2 years and thousands in legal fees, but eventually Robert won. I was included in the inheritance, though much of the goodwill in the family had been destroyed by that point. Oskikar, but the damage was done. My name was never added to the portrait. The lie that I'd had an affair persisted in whispers, and my own children, who knew the truth, never pushed to have it corrected. "It would cause too much drama," David said when I brought it up in the 90s. "Dad's gone now. Grandpa's gone. Let it rest. It's not worth reopening old wounds," Margaret agreed. Even Thomas, the one whose paternity had been questioned, said, "Mom, I know you're innocent. We all know. But does it really matter what's on some old portrait?" Yes, it mattered, because that portrait represented how the family saw me, as someone whose contributions didn't count, whose name didn't deserve to be preserved, whose existence was tolerable, but not celebrated. I lived with that for 43 years, and I'd convinced myself that maybe my children were right. Maybe it was better to let it go, to not cause trouble, to accept that some wrongs can't be righted. And then Sophie asked her question. After I finished telling the story in the dining room that day, the silence was deafening. Sophie broke it. "But that's not fair. You didn't do anything wrong." "No, sweetheart, I didn't." "Then your name should be on the portrait." "Yes, it should." She turned to her mother, my granddaughter, with the kind of righteous indignation only children possess. "We have to fix it. We have to put great-grandma's name on there. My granddaughter looked at me, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Grandma Eleanor. I never knew. I never thought to ask. It's not your fault, honey. Your parents never told you because they were ashamed. Not of me, but of what their grandfather did, and what they allowed to continue. Misai. My son David stood up, his face a mixture of shame and defensiveness. Mom, you have to understand. We were kids when this happened. We didn't have any power. You were kids then. You're not kids now. You've been adults for decades, David. And not once did any of you push to have this corrected? We didn't think it mattered that much to you. You didn't think it mattered? David, I told you repeatedly, for years, and you all told me to let it go, that it wasn't important, that I was being too sensitive. Because we didn't want the family fighting again, so you sacrificed my dignity to keep the peace. You chose comfort over justice. And you want me to understand that? He had no answer. Margaret spoke up, her voice small. What do you want, Mom? What can we do to make this right? I want my name on that portrait. I want my name in the family Bible where births and deaths are recorded. I want the official family history that's kept in the Historical Society updated to reflect my existence. And I want an acknowledgement, public, clear, and permanent, that I was wronged. That's a lot. Is it? Compared to 43 years of erasure? Compared to being called an adulterer by my father-in-law and having no one defend me? Compared to watching my own children benefit from this family's legacy while pretending I didn't deserve the same? Thomas, the youngest, finally spoke. Uncle Charles lied about you. Grandpa Harrison believed him. We all know that now. But Uncle Charles is dead. Grandpa's dead. The people who wronged you are gone. What's the point of dragging this all up? The point, Thomas, is truth. The point is that your children and grandchildren deserve to know the real story. The point is that I refuse to die with this lie still hanging over my head. Sophie, who'd been listening quietly, said something that surprised everyone. My teacher says that history is written by the winners, but it should be written by the truth-tellers. Great-grandma is a truth-teller. Out of the mouths of babes. The family reunion ended awkwardly that day. Half the extended family had no idea what to do with the information they'd just learned. Some people apologized to me. Others avoided eye contact. But something had shifted. The secret was out. The lie couldn't be maintained anymore. Over the next few weeks, my children had several difficult conversations among themselves. I wasn't part of them. They needed to work through their own feelings without me there. And then, 6 weeks after the reunion, David called me. Mom, we want to make this right. All of us. We're going to commission a new brass plate for the portrait with your name included. We're going to update the family Bible. And we're going to draft a formal statement for the Historical Society records explaining what happened and correcting the record. I cried. For the first time in years, I cried. Not from sadness or anger, but from relief. Thank you, I whispered. We should have done this decades ago. We were wrong, and we're sorry. 3 months later, a small ceremony was held at Magnolia House. The entire family was there, all 53 people who'd been at the reunion, plus a few others who'd heard what happened and wanted to show support. The old brass plate was removed from beneath the portrait. A new one was mounted in its place, and this time, every name was listed, including mine, Eleanor May Whitfield, beloved wife of Robert Whitfield, mother of David, Margaret, and Thomas, grandmother and great-grandmother to the family present today. My granddaughter read a statement aloud, explaining the history, the false accusation, the erasure, and the correction being made 43 years later. We acknowledge, she read, that Eleanor May Whitfield was wronged by this family, that she was unjustly accused, unfairly erased, and forced to carry the burden of a lie that was never true. Today, we correct that wrong. Today, we restore her name. Today, we tell the truth. Sophie stood next to me during the ceremony. When it was over, she took my hand. Now it's right, she said simply. Yes, sweetheart. Now it's right. She hugged me. I'm glad I asked, even though everyone got upset. I'm glad you asked too. Sometimes asking hard questions is the bravest thing you can do. Will you tell me more stories? About when you were young? And about Great-Grandpa Robert? I'd love to. Because now, finally, my stories mattered. My name was in the record. My place in the family was acknowledged. I wasn't erased anymore. Epilogue. I'm 84 years old now. I don't know how many more family reunions I'll attend, but I know this. When I die, my name will be in the family Bible. My name will be on the portrait. My story will be part of the official history. And my great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren will know the truth, not just about me, but about the importance of standing up for what's right even when it's inconvenient, even when it causes conflict, even when it's been buried for decades. Sophie is 8 now. Last week she came to visit me and said, "Great-grandma, I'm writing a report for school about someone brave. Can I write about you?" "Why would you write about me?" I asked. "Because you told the truth even when no one wanted to hear it. My teacher says that's what brave people do." I hugged her tight. "You can write about me. But remember, you were brave too. You asked the question no one else would ask. That started everything." Dusty Trier to anyone watching this who has family secrets, buried truths, or injustices that everyone has agreed to ignore. Tell the truth. Speak up. Don't let lies become legacy. It might cause discomfort. It might upset people. It might be messy and painful and complicated, but truth matters. Justice matters. Your story matters. Don't let anyone erase you. Not from portraits, not from documents, not from history. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be named. You deserve to have your truth told. And sometimes, all it takes is one brave question from someone who doesn't yet know that some truths are supposed to stay buried. Thank God for children like Sophie. And thank God I finally had the courage to answer honestly. My name is Eleanor May Whitfield, and I'm finally truly part of my family's story.